cast in the 1890s.
So they're heavy.
Very heavy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Madam Chair, it appears we have a quorum, so whenever you want to get started, we can go ahead. Madam Chair, it looks like we have a quorum, so whenever you're ready, we can get rolling.
I don't know if she can hear us or not. Okay. She cannot hear us. Stand by.
Mr. Mustin, can you say something to see if I can hear you now?
Testing. All right. It looks like we have a quorum, so whenever you're ready, we can get rolling.
Excellent, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see everyone, even though it continues to be virtual. In compliance with the notification requirements of Ohio Open Meeting Law and Section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rule of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you keep your microphone on mute and then use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Calling users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website, email, or phone number have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Proper channels for communicating our comments are sending an email to landmarks@clevelandohio.gov address with a comment or a letter, calling or leaving a message at 216-664-2532. or sending a letter or dropping off comments to City Hall at 601 Lakeside Avenue, Suite 519. Any and all communication with members of this body that are not communicated during a meeting of the body and or do not follow procedures for public comments established by this body are unwelcome and will be disregarded. Mr. Mussin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going over the virtual meeting rules and procedures, the chair will call each agenda item and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize Design Review Committee recommendations and any public comments received. The deadline for public comments is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to the commission members prior to the meeting. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called. Also just wanted to note, Madam Chair, we had a request from the applicants for case number 23-008, 2905 J Avenue, to be postponed and removed from today's agenda. So we'll be skipping agenda item number 6.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. We'd like to call the March 23rd, 2023 meeting to order. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Benezi, Councilmember Gray, Mr. Kalikia,
Here.
Mr. Dreyer,
Here.
Mr. Edmond,
Here.
Director Wong,
Here.
Mr. Strickland,
Here.
Mr. Trasick,
Here.
and Ms. Trott.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum. In addition to the commission members, we also have representative from law, Kevin Roberts, and as well as Jessica Beam, Carl Brunges, and myself from the Landmarks office are present.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to call our first applicant forward to unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project. The first applicant is the Garfield Memorial Phase 3 restoration, located at 12316 Euclid Avenue.
Okay, hello, my name is Todd Mayer. I'm with DLR Group. First, can everyone hear me? Perfect.
Yes, thank you.
So I am presenting the President James A. Garfield Memorial Restoration, Phase 3. Before I begin, I would just like to identify Kathy Goss, Marilyn Brandt, and Sandra Beitel, both all with the Lakeview Cemetery, that might be able to address any questions that I might not be able to regarding this project. So we are presenting Phase 3 of this project. If you remember, we've gone before you guys before in Phases 1 and Phase 2. This Phase 3 is focused on the lower terrace area. So it'll include a window and wall restoration, stair and handrail renovation, and the lower and upper terrace renovation. So can we go to the next slide? Again, brief history. The memorial was built in 1890. There's been several renovations to the building, most notably all focused around the lower terrace. We've been doing renovations. I misprint on this slide, 2023. We've actually been doing work on this project for, I don't know, since 2016, 2014, I think, is when we actually started doing the lower work. So go to the next slide. Again, this is Phase 1. We were focused on our initial restoration of the project was making sure it was structurally stable. There was the first problem we wanted to solve was the leaky terrace. That we'll get into this more, but you can see here in the before photo there was steel that was being rusted. We replaced it with concrete to make sure that the foundation, the base of the building was structurally stable. The next phase, next slide, was making sure that the envelope was secure. And we did this project in 2019. The initial intent was to do the terrace after this, after the first phase, but we again noticed lots of tree growth in the roof, and there was significant damage to the exterior envelope. So we proceeded with this phase again, restoring the stone, tuck pointing the entire building, some decorative stone replacement, and really actually cleaning up the terracotta panels on the frieze and restoring as best we could the building to its original condition. And I think we did a fairly remarkable job. But my congratulations to Kuhn Restoration, who did a lot of the work. And so after we got this done, there was a pause because again, funding is hard to come by for this building. So right now we've actually got some funding in place to move forward with Phase 3, and so that's what we're here to present forward with you guys today. So next slide. Phase 3 is going to focus on everything we haven't been able to touch so far on the exterior. That includes the lower terrace, replacing the lower terrace, the windows on that lower terrace area, handrails, and also the upper terrace at the balcony, exterior balcony. I'll go focus on these three separate project areas as we move forward. So next slide, please. The window and wall restoration. There was cleaning of the exterior wall in the previous phase, but as you can see, they never tuck pointed the wall. So we would need to tuck point the entire wall on both sides. When I say both sides, it's the exterior facing side, but also the interior facing side. So the side of the exterior wall, the parapet that is actually facing the memorial building. So both sides of that wall will be tuck pointed. The windows, there are several small windows that are about 7 inches wide by about 2.5 feet tall. They are going to be replaced in kind. I think, well, I say in kind, some of them are missing entirely right now, and it's just a sheet of plywood. Whitney Glass, they've been a great partner on this project. They've replaced leaded glass windows on the upper tower, and they would be contracted to replace these windows, leaded glass windows as well, with a steel frame inset into these original openings. Next slide, please. There are steps and handrails that are to the main entrance. The number one bubble on the corner there, the lower left-hand corner, that's the lower stair. And there's the upper stair is number 2. The lower stair, all of the treads are, over time, they're worn and they've kind of fallen out of their original location. They've shifted. So we are going to reset all of the stairs, all the stairs on that staircase. We're going to reset some of the lower treads or lower stairs on that upper staircase, number 2. Again, new joints, new sealant joints along all the treads. We're going to repair the steps as needed. Some of the steps have some chips, worn areas, and we're going to repair those with the similar techniques we used in when we repaired the monument in phase 2. We are going to replace the handrails. The handrails that are there right now, to the best of our knowledge, they are not original. They are, again, steel pipe, kind of an industrial looking handrail. We are going to replace those with code compliant handrails, but also they'll be historical. So cast iron with, I think next slide might have some more detail on the handrails. You can see the elements and the profiles we're going to go for with these exterior handrails. Again, make sure they're more of a period looking handrail as opposed to the industrial, 1 3/4 pipe, black pipe they have right now. Next slide. So I think the biggest component of this project is going to be the terrace replacement. The terrace, the lower terrace and the upper terrace have always been a challenge with this particular building. When it was first built, soon after it was constructed, there's been documentation of water coming into the building from this lower terrace area. I think, originally it was a gravel roof, and water was obviously coming in through there, getting into the crypt. So then, they replaced that. This is a sketch from a previous project where they kind of documented the history. So after the gravel roof, they replaced it with a concrete topping and a felt tar waterproofing. That lasted about 20 years. They came back after that, added a quarry tile in the setting bed. That lasted 20 or 30 years, if that. After that, they came back and added the pavers that you see now. So this, and every time we're trying to address water leaking down into the terrace, which is why you saw in phase 1, we had to replace all the steel because it had just been corroded so much over time that, this problem had to be addressed. And this is going to be our approach to fix this problem, with our approach being adding a waterproofing topping over a concrete base and to replace the pavers. As you can see here, there's The paver system themselves, replacing in kind, in our opinion, is not effective. There's, the membrane is deteriorated. You can't have access to the drains underneath, and water just gets backed up underneath these pavers because there's not enough room underneath the pavers to allow free flow of water underneath. If you go to the next slide. So what we are proposing is removing the pavers, removing the EPDM membrane, and putting a lightweight concrete topping over everything to replace the pavers, and then putting a Suprema Alsan traffic RS coating on top of that. And what that will do is it'll provide a waterproof coating over the entire terrace. We'll slope the concrete that we're going to add. We're going to slope to the drains. The drains that we're adding into this project, we're adding more drains, and we're moving them away from the exterior wall. So we'll get positive drainage towards the drains and away from the walls. And it'll all be on a waterproof membrane that can be easily repaired. It's monolithic in its appearance. It has a low sheen finish to it. It's not it's slip resistant. You go to the next slide, please. And some of you guys were out to the building last week. Thank you for coming out to braving the cold winter weather in March. But you saw the system in place. We had some samples that we brought out and had produced. You can see in the slide in the bottom left. We have some test panels of the material. I would ignore the joint lines you're seeing in that one panel to the bottom right corner of that bottom left image. The way we're going to have joints is going to be a very thin line that matches the color of the actual broadcast system, that gray quartz. You can see in image one, that's a deck of different finishes available, quartz colors for this type of a system. And we've identified this Rococo is the actual name of the color we're using or proposing for the quartz. That would come close to the color of the actual existing pavers. And again, that would be used across the entire lower terrace and the upper terrace as well. Again, we'll be adding in new drains, cast iron grates, 8 inches by 8 inches square, again, in multiple locations across the terrace to help maintain or manage water. And then again, you can see the system on that top right image. It's several different layers that are applied, to the concrete, from base coats to the waterproof coating to fleece to another coatings. And the top coatings are the quartz and the sealant. Next slide, please. And again, some of the benefits that we have with this system. It's a 20-year warranty. Lifespan can be extended with additional coatings. So, if there are any issues with the system itself, applying any repairs is seamless. The with the existing system, it's low maintenance. For the cemetery, you got to sweep it up every once in a while. But because again, where the drains are exposed, you can see if there's any clogs in the drains and manage those quickly, as opposed to being hidden underneath pavers as it is right now. Another benefit to the product is it's manufactured in Ohio, in Wadsworth. When we were out on a week and a half ago, I think Bob, you were mentioning that what's the warranty issue on this particular product? Well, we went back to Suprema, and they'll warranty the product up until you get to a joint. I think one of the critical details in this particular system is how the horizontal surface engages with the vertical stone, both on the wall and in the monument. Right now we have with the pavers, there's no transition because the waterproofing is wrapping up underneath 2.5 inches. We're not going to get that with this system. We're going to provide a caulk joint along the perimeter where the Alston traffic coding meets the vertical surfaces. And that caulk joint will, match the color of the traffic system. And it's something that the cemetery will just have to maintain, keep an eye on. Every couple of years to monitor the sealant joint to make sure it's watertight and replace it as needed. The upper terrace, we don't have that issue, actually. We have, and you can see on some of the images here on to the right, those are images of the upper terrace. We do have flashing up the stone. So there's the opportunity to get the full 20-year warranty on the terrace is available because we do have that flashing. It's just, as you can see on the images to the left, that flashing was never part of the original design. And, it's not at the steps as well. So those are the details that that we'll propose for this roofing system. And we are confident that this will, make the building and the terrace last for the next 20, 30 years. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you for the presentation. We will move on to staff report.
Madam Chair, as the applicant said, a site visit was completed on March 13th with several commission members present. Staff recommends approval with the condition that a mock-up on site be done with Landmark's staff having the opportunity to check it out prior to moving forward, and also pending approval through the Cleveland Heights process, since this property is actually in both cities.
Thank you for that summary. We will now open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. I'll start us off. I think this is a very sensitive restoration, knowing and being watching the last two renovations. I think this is a great monument and appreciate your sensitivity to restoring the details to what they should be. Mr. Clicchio?
Yes, good morning. I agree, it is a great monument in so many respects, architecturally. Also, again, Ohio's world famous for having some of the largest sandstone quarries in the world. So this is a monument to sandstone as well. But I have a couple of questions. You mentioned the stairs. What is the substructure of the stairs currently? What's holding this chair, the actual steps?
We don't know. We don't know. We're sure we don't have any documentation on those existing steps, the substructure.
Did you remove any of the steps to see what the substructure is or not?
Not yet. You can see underneath. It looks to be again large masonry stone, sandstone underneath, maybe.
Well, because that's a major factor as far as the longevity and structural security of the steps. What's holding them. Usually, it's a foundation that it's typically now we use concrete as a substructure. Back in those days, I think they used other stone. I've been there many times. It looks like the steps are kind of sinking into, they're lowering. There's lippage and movement. That usually means that the structure is not sound. So how are you replacing the steps then, or repairing them?
We are going to put them in new setting beds. Remove the setting beds and waterproof the underside of it and putting them on new mortar beds.
Okay, so all the steps will be removed?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. The other question I have is in the terrace. So typically, again, historically, terraces are usually suspended stone floors, and the stone is usually 2 or 3 inches thick that would allow traffic to take place. Once you adhere those pavers to the actual structure, then the pavers are subjected to the movement of the entire structure, and that's why they end up cracking and creating a problem as far as water flow and water drainage is concerned. So now you're redoing that platform and then adhering the new stone floor to the structure?
It's not not a stone that we're adhering, it's a quartz broadcast, so it's, we're gonna put a little concrete topping over the entire surface, then we're gonna cover that with a waterproof, traffic coating, and on top of that coating is gonna be a quartz broadcast.
But are you using quartzite, you said? Is that
Quartz, yes.
quartz? In slabs and pieces or laminated in some form or other?
Go to that slide, thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
that seems to me like a lamination of some type. Is that-
Yes,
Yes, it is. Yeah, have you checked that carefully as far as longevity and structural integrity? Because it becomes part of the structure. And it's been my experience over the years that pavers don't function well when they're actually adhered to the entire structure.
there might be some confusion. This is not a paver system that we're proposing. This is a full coating over the entire surface. So there's not gonna be any pavers on this new
So what
system.
is this that I'm seeing at then, this composition here?
This is the system that will be broadcast over the entire terrace. So we're removing all the pavers, removing the membrane underneath, and replacing that with a concrete topping,
Right.
and that concrete topping will be sloped to drains. On top of that concrete, we're gonna put this traffic coating. You can see all the multiple layers that build up for this traffic coating. On the top layer is gonna be that quartz broadcast. That's gonna look
see.
very similar to what that image is in number one.
Okay, and that's, what is the adherence element? Is there some kind of an epoxy then?
Yes, there's a primer that goes on first, and they have their
Yeah.
the next coating with our RS 730. Fleece, it's multiple coats, but it's attached to the concrete first with the primer coat.
Yeah, I think I personally have an issue with that from two respects. One, it's not really a part of the historical element that we have there in the entire monument. And two, you're looking at a material that will have a limited span life. I think you mentioned 15, 20 years. And so in 20 years, a monument that's already lasted over 100 years will have to be replaced again? Is that the general?
This is the warranty. You can, the manufacturer said we can extend the life of this product, another 10, 20, 30 years beyond that, just by making repairs to it and its maintenance of it. And the repairs to the system itself, when they remove some of the top layers, seam the new material in and then put the broadcast layer on top, it is, relatively very seamless repair when they make these repairs in the future. The system has been used on, historical buildings in New York and Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And very similar applications. It holds up well over time, and this is a proven system. And our concern.
Yeah, I agree that it's a proven system, but it's almost, has the same reaction as concrete, and concrete begins to crack and disintegrate after 11, 10 years, especially in the weather conditions that we have in Cleveland. But one question is that what's going on with the current pavers? They're being completely eliminated, obviously, right?
Yes.
And what stage are they in? They seem to be, when I walked on them a couple of years ago, they seem to be, for the most part, okay, except again, the failure of the waterproofing system.
Yes, that's.
Why
that's
don't you reuse the pavers, the current pavers?
Some of them are cracked. The way that they sit on some of the existing pavement, they rock back and forth because just the way the existing substrate has been poured. And it's a maintenance issue to get to the drains. You don't notice any water leaks until there's, significant damage underneath
Yeah.
underneath the pavers.
Well, that's because what the original installation system was violated repeatedly and changed. Because typically those pavers are suspended, allowing the water to fall through in the joints, and the water then doesn't become an issue, but I think that it was probably changed. It looks to me like it might have been changed like in the 1920s and adhered to the structure, which starts creating the problems we're just talking about.
Our research indicates that there's been no pavers on this building originally. The pavers were introduced in 1985.
1905?
1985 was when they were introduced.
Okay.
Before that, it was quarry tile. Before that, it was felt tar waterproofing, and before that, it was I think just gravel.
No, but originally they were the sandstone pavers were part of it. That's how the terrace was made originally, when this structure was originally created. Then it was changed and modified as we are doing now with a system that seems to have a temporary life. And I think that's the issue that I'm having with these systems that are not the natural stone that these structures were originally built with.
Sure, I haven't come across any research that indicates sandstone pavers were original to the building.
Mhm.
But I mean, we're dealing with the reality we have right now, which is about 2.5 inches of thickness to work with. And, to put a paver on top of that, you're allowing for, a nominal 1/2 inch drainage cavity underneath.
Yeah,
Again, the issue we're trying to solve, the problem we're trying to solve here is it's not enough room for water to move freely underneath there. It easily gets clogged. And the best way that we're proposing to address that is to put all the drainage layers on top so you can see that and maintain it properly.
no, I agree. I think, what you're doing with the waterproofing system is excellent and it needs to be done. I think my issue is to retain historical integrity. And, sandstone is readily available. It's not a rare stone. We still have open quarries in Amherst, Ohio, and different parts of Ohio. So it's not a difficult. So I think for me, I would prefer seeing, for historical and structural reasons, a suspended sandstone floor as it was probably done originally in this building. Those are my comments for now. And I mean, restoring stone, restoring this beautiful, magnificent monument is not an easy task, and I really praise you for taking on the challenge. But it's just that, when we do these things, these restoration projects, and I've seen many of them in Europe, they take a lot of time, and to me, they should be done with historical integrity, and because we don't get a chance to do them that often. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Todd, for addressing the warranty issue that I brought up during the walkthrough. And if I heard you correctly, you said Suprema would warrant the system up to the joint?
Correct.
Right. And so now at least the representatives from the monument representing the owner group understands their responsibility in terms of maintaining that joint to maintain the integrity of the warranty. The question that I have is in terms of prep and removing the existing system, getting down to the existing waterproofing layer, what prep is anticipated in removing that system and preparing for the cast in place concrete? And is any type of bonding agent anticipated to bond that concrete layer to the existing structure?
Yes, so we'll remove the, fully remove the EPDM membrane by mechanical systems, just scrape it off. Make sure we get down to the bare concrete, and we'll have to scarify that existing surface, so there is some sort of bondage between the existing concrete and the new topping that we have.
Are you gonna shot blast the deck?
To be determined, yeah, something to give a, again, a scarified surface for that, so it's not completely smooth.
All right. Well, given the thickness of that concrete layer at only 2 to 2.5 inches thick, I think it's important that that layer adequately bond to that structure to limit the movement that Giancarlo was concerned with.
I agree. Our structural engineer, sorry, I don't have the method in front of me, but she's reviewing that right now.
All right. And in terms of the mock-up, what was discussed that I recall was a mock-up of the mortar color at that wall, given that the wall in those locations was not clean to the same extent as the monument itself. And I don't know if Dan has any other ideas in terms of mock-ups that are required for our review before final approval.
Yeah, I think it's just going to come down to kind of seeing what they come up with, and then seeing how it matches, and how it actually works on site with the different mortar, I guess, colors, and then the different wearing of the stone. But I think, yeah, a simple mock-up should be enough, hopefully.
Okay, that's fine. That's that is consistent with what I took away from our site visit. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Edmond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Mr. Kalickia's comments that an up-to-date, modern, detailed paving system with a drainage plane underneath would be preferable if it's feasible. It sounds like maybe with the depth available, or maybe it's a cost issue, it's not feasible. But I want to dive a little bit into some of the installation details. So if I understand correctly, the at the lower terrace, the traffic coating just butts up to the retaining wall ends, and there's a caulk joint there. But on the upper terrace, it would come up the retaining wall or the wall of the monument. And are you planning to reutilize the existing copper counter flashing and go underneath that? Or what's actually happening with the flashing at the edges?
That's our intent to reuse that, is again, remove it, flash underneath it, and then reinstall that copper flashing around the perimeter. There are, again, some conditions where we don't have that copper flashing on that upper terrace, but we can just wrap it underneath. There's a stone horizontal projection, we would wrap it underneath there. That condition happens in some of the balcony walls.
Was there any consideration of maybe doing a similar detail at the lower terrace? I'm really concerned that where that membrane ends and there's just the caulk, that's really going to be a weak point, especially if there's any differential movement there at all.
There was lots of consideration for that detail, to be honest. And going back and forth between the paver system and the system we're proposing, we would still need flashing. Again, for your traditional 8 inches of flashing upturn. In this photograph right here, you can see that joint would be covering up the stone on that level with the flashing. But when you walk around the lower terrace, there are a lot of conditions where that detail will look awkward, and you can have that 8-inch flashing tied into create a new joint along the existing stone, which I don't think we want to do that. If you go to the next joint to cover up the stone, your flashing is going to be 12 to 14 inches high. So you'll have, 14-inch flashing, copper flashing on the lower tiers. And then you also have the condition where you're at the steps. Just the way the steps tie into this, the paver system, you wouldn't be able to put flashing on the steps because we have, they taper to a condition where it's, less than 4 inches to the top of the step in the paver system. So it's not ideal. I agree 100% that the caulk joint is going to be a maintenance issue for the cemetery to monitor, but it is really I think the best solution that can be used in all those different applications, and opposed to going with a more traditional flashing system.
And a couple more things I want to understand. So the fluidipide membrane with the scattered cords, that would also be going over the treads and risers or the steps continuous?
No,
Is that right?
I'm sorry, no, the steps and treads would remain the existing stone that they are right
Okay.
now.
Right. And then in the field of the membrane, you made a reference to joints that would be the same color as, how are joints being handled? Obviously, you have a monolithic pour of a topping, sloped concrete topping slab. Are there joints in that slab, or is it completely monolithic? And how does the membrane handle that movement? And then just visually, are there do I understand that there's sort of faux joints in the topping or in the membrane? How does that work?
Sure. So I think the previous slide, I remember this presentation accurately. There was a proposed joint layout, and it kind of followed the geometry of the building, anticipated some movement. Can we get to the previous slide? There we go. This one here. Thank you. So you can see the joint layout.
So those are the actual joints in the sloped topping slab?
Yes.
Okay. And then the membrane spans over those joints, or how does that?
Yes, there's a detail from the manufacturer for how that joint works. There's I think a tape underneath there that allows movement underneath it, and then the membrane goes on top of that. The the quartz broadcast itself will be interrupted at that joint. We bring it close, try to maintain half-inch gap at best along those joints to control that movement.
So and then within each of those, say, panel areas, it would be visually monolithic with the
Correct.
membrane. And then are those little dots, are those the drains?
Yes.
So each one of those sort of slopes 4 ways into those drains.
Yes, again, we don't have much room to work with. It's a very gradual slope. I think 1/8 inch over a foot in some areas. We're talking 1 to 2% in these areas.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmund. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you. At the site visit, you mentioned that done some research on what was originally in place on those decks, and it was, I think you said it was gravel?
Yes.
Okay, so there were no like flagstone or sandstone pavers.
Not from what we've researched, no.
Okay. Now you're going to be removing the existing pavers in this EPDM membrane, and there's a layer of concrete that will remain.
Yes.
Okay. And that's been there for a very long time?
Yeah, I think that was that one section diagram. I think that concrete has been there since the 20s. 1920s.
Okay. Right. So this system that you're putting in has a 20-year guarantee, and you said with maintenance, you might be able to extend it somewhat?
Yes, they can put additional coatings to extend the life of this system beyond 20 years.
Okay, so then you probably would need to start budgeting for replacement in 25, 30 years, correct?
Well, we'll need to budget for, I hope we're budgeting for something, but, again, I don't think, that this system is going to need significant or full replacement for another 30, 40, 50 years, to be honest. I know the manufacturer is telling me all these great stories, but, I mean, the way they, designed the system and the way it's been installed in other buildings and facilities, I mean, this system will last a long time, and repairs, again, will be relatively seamless, to extend the life of it. They're not going to warranty it for 50 years, but, you know, the practical use of it should get into that length of time.
Have you conferred with anybody in other areas with similar climates that may have already used this system? Have you talked to them and see how they've what their experience has been with it?
I have not talked to specific projects, but also this system is used extensively in New York, which has a very similar climate to Cleveland. And again, on many of their historical buildings, lots of old buildings in New York. And this is, again, one of the premier systems used in that city for these types of applications.
Okay, well, those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Clicchia?
I have a couple more questions. I guess one is, you're removing the stair rail, correct? You said that you're replacing the stair rail?
Yes.
So are you still, will you be using the same angering holes that are in the stone now, or will those be,
Yes.
they will not be re-drilled?
No, we'll use the same holes that are there right now.
How are you removing that current stair rail from those positions?
Very, very carefully. That's
Yes.
some methods with the contractor. You know, we don't know yet. You know, chiseling. Well, we'll have to do it with care, to be honest. Yeah, because we're dealing with soft stone.
Okay. So is the stair rail currently like at a level? Because I was just there not too long ago, and the stair rail seems to be, except the stones seem to fail, and I'm not sure why that is. That's why I was asking about the substructure of the actual stair, because the stairs looks like they're 6 inches thick, which they themselves are structurally accurate, but what's underneath is a question. So then the stair rail, yeah, if you remove it, then yeah, using the same open. But what's the plan for replacing some of the cracked and out of level steps?
So we would use a very similar system to what we did on the monument itself. There's product that we use that bonded to the sandstone. We tested it when we were on the monument for the tower. There's a couple patches that we can use that bonds to the sandstone, and the color is not a perfect match. So what we did on the towers, we came back and they had masons stain the patchwork to match both the color and the texture of the adjacent stone. And I can bring up photos, show you photos of how that was approached in the tower to match those conditions for the patches.
Okay. I guess that's my question. Well, can we go back to the terrace one more time? So when I'm hearing the word bonding several times, okay, let me just back up 1 second. Let's take a look at that photograph number 1. And you have is that a photograph of the terrace?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we're looking at the joins of the stone, and those joins, they seem kind of aesthetically unpleasing right now, but that is a typical condition of a suspended floor, except for the fact that the joints have been either clogged up with debris over the years and not maintained, which means that the substructure was incorrect. But that system is really a system that is traditional, historical, and functions well, where the stone pavers are suspended. When we talk about bonding, stone just doesn't bond. When we bond stone to an entire structure, an entire building, you're introducing a whole series of movements that will compromise that stone, which will compromise the floor that you're suggesting, in my opinion. And that's a big, I think I have an issue there in not replacing the terrace historically. And I think those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Mr. Mayor, do you have any response to that, or shall I keep moving forward?
I want to make sure we understand, we're not bonding any stone. This is a waterproofing system that's going on top of the concrete. The finish will be of course, is a monolithic looking stone finish, but it's not an actual piece of stone we're bonding to the terrace here.
What you're saying is it will be quartz pieces that will be broadcast across that concrete topping slab so that it will appear like stone, but it's actually not a stone material.
Correct. Yes.
Mr. Kalikia?
Actually, I'm trying to take my hand off, but it's not working.
Okay, well then I'm going to move forward to Miss from Director Wong.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I would like to just call the question and move us towards a decision.
Okay. Thank you. So hearing the discussion on this and the feedback, but starting to reach that point where we are revisiting items, would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we approve the certificate of appropriateness as presented with the condition that the applicant provide a mock-up of the motor joints proposed for the exterior wall system.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do you have a second, Mr. Edmond?
Second.
All right. Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Madam Chair, sorry.
Madam Chair, oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry, Carl, you can go ahead.
Yeah, we also, as part of the approval, should be for Cleveland Heights as well, because they still have to do their portion of the review.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. So, Mr. Strickland, do you agree with adding that condition?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do.
Mr. Edmond, do you agree also with
Yes.
your second?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that addition, Mr. Brunges. I appreciate it. And, oh, sorry, I overlooked that. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Kalikia,
No.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
and Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing your project move forward.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our second applicant, located at the Agora Complex at 5000 Euclid Avenue, Phase 3 West Wing.
Hello,
We'd like to welcome the applicant. Go ahead. Please introduce
Uh,
yourself and tell us about your project.
I'm Jesse Swire. Oh, hang on a second. I got double mute.
We could hear you a moment ago. Jesse?
Sorry, I'm
David?
using two devices and I got it mixed up a little bit. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Awesome. All right. I'm Jesse with LDA Architects. This is the Agora complex renovation. So this is phase 3, which we call the West Wing, which was the more the storage unit for the WHK WMS recording studios through the 50s and into the early 80s. We previously got design approval for phase 1 and phase 2, which is the colors you kind of see on the back of the building, going from the green, orange, yellow, or green, orange, white to the red and the gray tones you see now in the back. So phase 3 is the parking lot, some of the landscaping, the canopies, and the new openings proposed to the West Wing building. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this is the West Wing kind of from the Google Earth image part of the complex. It's actually completely separated from the rest of the building. We'll go to the next slide. These are just some of the existing condition photos. Some, again, we presented most of these photos when we did the phase 1. And then if you go to the next slide, it's just a recap of some of the renderings and perspectives we presented when we presented the phase 1 design for the color scheme and the East Wing studios. If you can go to the next slide. This is the proposed site plan. So the main change here is we're going to start allocating residential parking from the office and mixed use parking. And one of the ways we're going to do that is there's 3 existing curb cuts on the site. 2 are not being used. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the 2 that are not going to be used to provide 2 separate entrances for the residents and for the office. And then the middle one will remain, but we'll kind of modify the existing fence so that way you have access only through the upper and the lower curb cut that's there now. And that will be repaired as needed. The parking lot will be resurfaced, restriped. We're going to do new landscape beds on the south elevations of the West Wing and the East Wing. All the existing chain link fences on the east and west side of the property will remain as is. And then in the courtyard, we're going to continue on what we looked at for phase 1 on the courtyard and provide a little bit more landscaping and privacy screening for some of the residents that will be living in the West Wing. East Wing will be offices. And then we had the theater, of course. Midtown is in the West Tower. And then there's a vacant feature tenant for the next to Midtown in the tower as well. If you want to go to the next slide. This is a little bit more detail on the courtyard. There's 2 existing weeping trees that we're planning on keeping and maintaining in the courtyard. And you can see to the kind of top of the courtyard, which is the west side, that we're adding some arborvitae-like trees to help screen the new large windows and just kind of, you know, that sidewalk and courtyard is kind of a mixed use thing. So we're just trying to give the residents a little bit more privacy. We're modifying the sidewalks and entrances into the West Wing, providing 2 new entries into the residents of the West Wing. The courtyard off to the north or to the right of the page, that will basically remain as is, and we'll just kind of the landscape will just get fixed up and repaired as needed. And then what you see on the top is a section diagram. So the canopy down the middle of the courtyard, and this is probably where I think we got most of our comments from the Euclid Corridor Design Review Board. The canopy down the middle is an existing structure and is part of our period of significance. So therefore it's considered historic by the State Preservation Office. So we're looking at to provide some additional coverage to the entrances to the office and to the West Wing. We're proposing a kind of convex canopy that slopes in 2 directions to provide drainage and to kind of play off this idea of a sound wave thing, which is also integrated into the interior design of the buildings as well. If you want to go to the next slide. This is our landscape palette for the front of the building on the south facade, and then examples of what we're doing with the arborvitaes as well. We'll go to the next slide. This is just the simple diagrammatic layout of the loft units inside the West Wing. So there'll be 13 total units. 2 of them will be 2 bedrooms. And you can see the relationship to the courtyard to the entrances of the building there. If you want to go to the next slide. These are the elevations. So particularly in the east elevation is where most of the work will occur. So originally back in like the 20s and when the building was originally built, there was large openings in the facade. And we're going to kind of reutilize those for the new windows for the units, matching the existing openings. And then as well as providing the 2 new entrances into the facade. So you can see the original one now is kind of in the middle, and then we'll do the 2 new ones to the north and south of the building. And then on the west elevation, we got to modify and fill in a few of the openings because we're close to the property line and our distance from our neighboring building. We got to, I think we're talking with the city, we're allowed to, we got to make the condition a little bit better than what it is now in terms of window ratio to wall ratio. So we're actually reducing a little bit of the window ratio while not really impacting the units on the inside, as the units on the end have natural light already through other openings that are existing. Going to the next slide. The south elevation does not really change from what was presented during our phase 1, phase 2 review. The north elevation, you can see we're replacing some windows and adding an additional window above what is an existing fire escape. And then the garage that's in the back on the north will just become a fixed storefront simulating a garage. And I think that covers it for the north and south elevation. So here's an image you saw in the front. If you want to go to the next slide and see a few more renderings of the courtyard. This is from Prospect Avenue looking down through the courtyard. One more. So here's kind of an overall view of the courtyard here. You can see the delineation of the arborvitaes from the residences windows. For the canopy, again, this is where we got most of our comments from the Euclid Design Review Board. The goal is for the structure to remain as is down the middle. The owner will clean to the best as possible to get as clear as possible that canopy down the middle. If it does not get clear enough or does not really change color, they will replace it. And then the new canopies to the sides, to the doors into the office and into the residences. This will be like a flat, warped kind of plastic thing, like a 3-form type of product that will drain off to the side. So it slopes in 2 directions. I think one of the concerns from Euclid Design Review Board was the possible buildup of dirt in the valley as it drains. So I think one thing we're going to look at is doing a more solid look instead of a clear at just the entrances, just to help hide the dirt. The ownership has commented to us that they plan on maintaining and keeping the canopies clearer than what the previously was done with those. If you want to go to the next slide, just some more views of the courtyard. Then the next one would be at eye level. Down through there. And I think that is the last slide. That's the back north side, so just with the new window modifications in the back there.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We will move on then to design review committee comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Euclid Corridor Design Review District on the 16th, and they approved it with conditions to consider including mural artwork in the corridor to celebrate the entertainment history of the building and previous use.
All right, thank you. And staff report?
Madam Chair, staff feels that the existing artwork should be photo documented and there should be coordination with the City Public Art Coordinator prior to covering up or any removal. But staff is supportive of the proposal and recommends approval.
All right, thank you for the summary. We'll then open up the floor for questions and comments from the commission. Director Wong?
Yes, thank you to the chair, to the applicant. I know that this was your former offices, so must be interesting to design your own offices into lofts. But I just wanted to comment that, very well done. It's, the look is consistent and great with the building. I did want to mention that you may need to take a look at the zoning code regarding bike parking, as well as the parking lot, just to make sure there's compliance. There is a specific zoning code, that really kind of denotes where the bike parking should go. And I know that there
public bike parking, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We do have interior as part of phase 2. We do have large storage space for private bikes, but we'll look into the private bike storage on the site.
Yes, there should be more detail in the zoning code about that. And I also want to just raise the fact that with a large parking lot, looks like you're just going to resurface it, but there is also zoning that will have some more to say about greening the parking lot. Thanks.
Yes, so we did look at that, and I think we talked about that previously. And I think one of the big things with the zoning was also the number of parking spaces with the new occupants, and we're still well above our required, mostly because the Midtown offers a 50% reduction in parking code, so we should be good there. And then, yeah, I'll double check the green screening. I know we looked at that previously. I'll have to double check that. It's been a little while.
Thank you, Director Wong. Other questions or comments? I would agree with Director Wong's comments. I think this is a consistent what we saw in the earlier phases. I appreciate the approach to maintain that existing canopy, but trying to envision it with the new entry canopies, but agree with the local committee's comments of looking at the details of how dirt can collect in the valleys. But I think the rest are very consistent with what Director Wong said. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we did find a couple examples of a similar like plastic concave or convex curved canopies. They slope in both directions. I think part of it is mostly a maintenance thing. So to keep it from doing that, just regular maintenance has to be done. But there are quite a few, especially from 3form and similar companies that have, that attempted to do this inverse curved canopy.
Sure.
What appears to
But
be.
the color selection is, key to
Yes.
make sure it maintains that look you want in between those maintenance and
Correct.
cleanings.
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you. Have you researched this plastic material? Does it hold up well in the weather? Does it yellow with, I just was wondering what the longevity is of this material.
Yeah, so it is UV stable, so it should not yellow or change colors. The issue is, I think with the middle one down the middle, it's UV stable and doesn't yellow, but the issue is it has never been cleaned, so it's grayed quite significantly over time. So it's got kind of like a tint to it that hopefully we can kind of clean off. Yeah, the 3M products are rated for exterior. They're used for, bus route, like bus canopies consistently, and those items. And I guess if we need to, we could send a little bit more information on the actual product specs, which we do not have in the presentation. That might be helpful to, I think, address some of the Euclid corridor design comments and some of the comments we're hearing here.
Yes, please submit that. I think that would be helpful for everyone's records and understanding. Other questions, Ms. Anderson, or did that conclude your comments?
So that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to make a motion? Director Wong?
I'd like to make a motion to approve as presented with the condition that they take another look at the zoning code for bike parking as well as the green screen for the parking lot.
Do you agree with the recommendation by staff to photo document the artwork and or look at other opportunities for artwork?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And do you also agree with the condition of submitting the material for the canopies?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on the floor? Do we have a second? Mr. Edmond?
Second that.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right. Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland, Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
and Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We look forward to seeing your project move forward.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the comments.
We'll move on to our next applicant located at 3211 Dennison Avenue, demolition.
Hi, I'm Brett Parsons with the Demolition Bureau for the City of Cleveland, and I'll be presenting on our proposal for a demolition of 3211 Dennison. If you could go to the next slide. So we are seeking the approval for demolition of this two-story residential property. It is in state forfeiture as of February of 2022. The city has received 15 formal complaints on this property, and the city has had to board up and reboard this property 12 times. And because of the number of complaints and the number of board ups, this property is a priority for Councilwoman Maurer, and she would like to see this property demolished as it is causing issues. It has back taxes of over $50,000, and because this would be demolished as nuisance abatement, the current site plan would be a vacant lot. You can advance to the next slide. I think the site location and context for this property is really important. The Arts House Inc. is a local nonprofit, and the owner of that has spoken with the councilwoman a lot and would like to see this property demolished. It is causing a lot of issues for her. And when we went on our site visit, we saw there was a crossing guard right to the left of that property on that corner. There's a school really near this area, and so there are a lot of young children who are walking down this street and past this house that is often left pretty open. If you could go to the next slide. We also had the County Land Bank do an assessment on this property. They ultimately recommended demolition, just stating that the home is damaged beyond repair. And the stairs to the basement were also completely gone, so they couldn't even get down to the basement. If you can go to the next slide, we have some exterior photos of the property. I think it's important to note also that there's been some vandalism, so there are people who are near this property. If you can go to the next slide, we have some interior photos. And if you can advance one more, we have more interior photos. Again, you can see the stairs to the basement that are just totally gone. And then if you could advance one more, as I said, our site plan would be a vacant lot. So we would demolish the structure, remove all foundations, so grade material, level the site with clean backfill, topsoil, seed, and straw. That's all.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to design review committee comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were 2 members of the Tremont Brooklyn Center Design Review Committee present at the March 16th site visit, as well as a few members from the commission here. At their meeting last week, the committee voted recommend approving the demolition of the building as it's in very poor condition.
All right. Thank you for that summary and staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doing our history on the property, this lot was transferred from Ozias Fish to George C. Abbey on December 31st, 1885. And with finding another news article, we believe this house was built in 1886. He was a private 1st Regiment with Connecticut's heavy artillery in the Civil War. And he was in City of Cleveland by 1865 per the city directory. He was listed as being a lightning rod manufacturer or agent. The addresses for this building started out as 182 Newburgh Street, changing to Dennison Street, and then again to 673 Dennison Street by 1896. He and his wife are buried in Riverside Cemetery. The Abbey sold the property to Henry DeWitt Cogswell in 1891, but they continued to live in the building until 1903. And Cogswell kept it basically as a rental property, and we were able to find other people living there, another family, the Kingsbury, but there's that small gap for 5 years who lived there. Eventually, the property was transferred to Teresa Troutman in 1919, and the property was up until recently in her name. Her husband, Charles Troutman, was a private first class. During the Spanish-American War, Teresa was his fourth wife, and they had 6 children together. The house remained in the family until the recent foreclosure. And Elsie Mae Troutman Sands, who was one of the 2 daughters that remained in the house, and passed away in 2007. And when we look at the back taxes, this is when they started accruing. This photograph was taken 1 month after her death. A little bit of the history. The first complaint came in 2009, so 2 years after her death, due to backed up plumbing. And that may have been from a tenant who may or may not have known that his landlord had passed away. And then the first board up started in 2011. This was approved for demolition by early 2012 and then just continued to sit. Multiple board ups, as noted, violation notice in 2017, again approved for demolition in 2018 and has been sitting. The last request for board up was last year. We did do a site visit on March 6, 2023. I was able to reach out to the family, but unfortunately we were not able to get any historic photos of the house in time for this presentation. It should also be noted that Teresa passed away in 1952, even though it is still in her name. Here's a look into the basement from the rear of the building. We were able to gain access to supplement the photos that were shown earlier. It was a little bit treacherous walking through here. Water had infiltrated amongst the many different complaints. There's also been the additional loss of context. Art House was one of the ones that was complaining about this building, and these are the 2 buildings that were demolished immediately to the east within my time here. And then there was also an additional house across the street that was also demolished. So we've lost a lot of context in this neighborhood. This property gets called a nuisance and that it needs to be abated, and the solution now proposed is demolition. However, in my opinion, this building is not a nuisance, it's a victim. It's a victim of policies and practices that are too narrowly focused and only consider the immediate complaint to fix it and then wait for the next one. We see the effects, but we don't really consider the causes. We see that the problem is here and how to remedy it, but do we ever consider why? Why is this building a problem? Why is it abandoned? How did a property remain in someone's name more than 50 years after her death? Why did accruing tax delinquency not raise a red flag and bear some investigation? How many more tax delinquent properties in our historic districts, our city, or our county are facing a similar fate due to deceased owners? If someone had asked some of these questions 10 years ago, we may be looking at a different solution now. This should not have happened. Our current policies and practices have failed this contributing structure. Using Chapter 161.05 of the Codified Ordinances of Cleveland, staff has considered the architectural and historic significance of the building, the significance of the building in contributing to the architectural and historic character of its environs, the present and potential economic viability of the building, considering its physical condition, and the presence of conditions on the property that are detrimental to the immediate area and cannot be reasonably remedied other than the proposed demolition. Staff feels the issuance as a certificate of appropriateness for demolition is appropriate at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brunges. All very good points and well said. We'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Colicchio.
Yeah, I really agree with what Carl said. It's very well said. And it's a reoccurring condition in Cleveland. But I was curious, wasn't this house part of the conversation of affiliating or associating these properties to the art house? Because we demolished the house in front of the art house, right?
These were the two houses that were demolished in front, and there may have been some discussion, but I don't think anything ever came of
Nothing
that.
ever happened.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colicchio. Director Wong.
Thank you. This is really sad. This is someone's home. This is a home. Hate to see things drag on like this. I do have a question because, Carl, you mentioned this had been slated for demolition twice, at least twice. Do we know why they were held off? Those demolitions were held off?
I do not. I noted that the first demolition request, they actually had the bulkhead and sidewalk permits pulled. And I don't know if Brett could answer those questions better. I was not able to look at that folder. I understand there's a lot of information in there.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I was just
Go
gonna
ahead,
say we just see that those permits were pulled, but obviously that they never actually happened. But that's really all the info that we have on that. We don't really know exactly what happened there.
Okay, so someone else had pulled the demolition permits, and now the city is coming forward to present a demolition. Got it.
Thank you, Director Wong. Other questions or comments from the commission? Well, I'll just interject I think it's with a heavy heart that I would agree based on looking at the photos and the review by staff that, regrettably would agree with the demolition of the structure. Mrs. Gray, questions or comments? Councilwoman Gray?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to echo Carl's sentimental comments pertaining to the history of the house and why does it take this long for these homes to be looked into, if not for demolition, but to preserve if possible. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree with Carl's comments. I've suggested previously that tax delinquency should be the first red flag for us to target potential properties for rescue rather than waiting 12 plus years and then ultimately having to demolish these structures that are obviously at one time were significant contributors to the historic fabric of the neighborhood. But it's very unfortunate. I was there for the walkthrough, and this house is in very bad condition, and given its proximity to a school across the street, I think it's appropriate to go forward with the demolition of the structure.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say I'm in full agreement with what Carl said. And I was at the site visit. The house is in horrible condition, but it was obvious to me that this was a wonderful, wonderful home at one time. There were a lot of cool features. And you know, unfortunately, I think it went tax delinquent right at the time of the mortgage implosion. So there were hundreds of houses across the city that were, you know, vacant and abandoned, and, you know, it was just this fire hose of decay that, you know, we were having to deal with. But that said, there needs to be something in place to intercede in these kind of situations before we wind up, you know, with these rotting, treacherous messes, and they just need to be demolished, as opposed to, you know, you can see in the picture on the left, that's not lovely. I mean, it looks like, you know, Chagrin Falls. It's really, really pretty. So, you know, I think it would take a lot of effort and some real creative thinking, but it's something that would be worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Not seeing any further hands up. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll put forth a motion to approve the demolition of the structure.
Thank you. As presented, I'm assuming. So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
This is Alan, I'll second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosick,
Yes.
and Ms. Trott.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
thank you. We'll then move on to our next applicant located at 1094 East 99th Street demolition.
Okay. Hi, my name is Steve Billington. I'm a representative of the Cuyahoga Land Bank. I'd like to thank the commission for allowing me to present on behalf of the Land Bank. I'm here to present on a property located at 1094 East 99th Street. It is a 2360 square foot colonial style house built in 1912. There's a picture. I have a presentation up on the screen now. There's a picture of the property. We did a site visit with where the staff and commission and design review committees were invited to take a walkthrough on February 3rd. So some of this presentation will kind of illustrate what was seen at those dates, on that date. This is an aerial view of the property where you can see kind of the density of the neighborhood and where it sits in a broader, zoomed out a little bit so you can see broader context of where it is. We acquired this property off the state forfeiture list in September 22.
I'm gonna have to stay on this until this over.
And we did an initial inspection and determined it should be a demolition. We revisited the property and asked our real estate development team to take a review of the property as well, but determined still that it would then should go towards demolition. If you could scroll to the next page, please. This is a kind of snapshot of the neighborhood. Pictures from the neighborhood. On the right side of the screen, there's pictures of the houses to the immediate left and right. The center picture is kind of a large tree in front. It's kind of indicative of the whole exterior of the structure. There's a lot of overgrowth. And then there's a couple views up and down the street and across the street. If you could go to the next slide, please. This is a look at some of the exterior conditions. It's really neglected and overgrown. Driveway and sidewalks have been not maintained at all and are crumbling. There's a lot of foliage around the property, which kind of brought us to the first kind of issue with the property. There's really no functioning gutters or downspouts. It's a very tall chimney that needs to be tuck pointed. the siding is very poor, and there's a tree growing into the foundation on the driveway side. When we got into the property, and I'll show you those pictures in a moment, it had really pushed the blocks of the basement in 6 to 8 inches. This is a picture of interior pictures, some of the interior pictures. It just shows that it's really been gutted primarily. And all the windows are either, damaged or missing. There is a leaded glass window kind of that was covered by both siding and interior kind of drywall. It was kind of lost or hidden for a number of years, but we've kind of seen it and exposed it now. That was in the living room. There's also indication, and you can't see it in this picture, that there was a fire in the dining room at some point, which did some damage. If you could go to the next page, please. This is kind of a look down into the basement. Since these pictures were taken, and the basement stairs further collapsed, making it really rather dangerous to get down there. And I think the people that were on the site visit, I don't think anyone went much further than towards the basement stairs. So this is kind of an indication. There's no mechanical systems in place. There's a fuse box that's not connected to anything. There's no furnace or water heaters. The plumbing and electrical is kind of all is missing and stripped. And again, I said that it was one person's indication that the block in the basement was pushed into the basement 6 to 8 inches in one area where the tree was growing. This is a picture of what our site finish proposal is. We would tear the house down and plant grass, green the property, maintain any of the healthy trees in the back. I think actually this might be, this might be the wrong picture. I think it's the property to the south of this is the property that in question, not the one that's greened out on this, but the property just to the south of that. Yes. And it shows kind of an addition in the back that was, one of the comments of the design review committee was, or in that meeting, was that there was a kind of haphazardly thrown up addition in the back, which you can see in this picture. So that is when we revisited the property with the real estate development team here at the land bank. It doesn't have a garage. Everything would need to be replaced almost entirely, siding, and the estimates were really far exceeding, into the $250,000 to $300,000 range when all told. And those are really rough estimates. Some of them I'm not 100% in agreement. A $10,000 kitchen and a 1.5 bathrooms at $5,000 is not likely, but just they would attempt to put some numbers on it. So we have submitted to the committee and the commission that we believe this is a demolition, and we'd like to request ability to get a demolition permit on the property. That's the end of my presentation.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to design review committee comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Magnolia, Wade Park, East Boulevard, Grantwood Allotments Design Review Committee on the 2nd. And they did not have a quorum, but we did have a good discussion about the project. The committee members present discussed difficulty with the decision presented and acknowledgement of difficulty with projects along the street that has multiple vacant lots. They did have conversation on bringing in partner organizations to assess empty homes for a block-wide thorough stabilization plan to look at the context of demolition applications. Overall, they were generally in favor of the demolition due to the status of the house, but they did have concerns on having an appropriate salvage plan. As Steve mentioned, the leaded glass window that was uncovered after siding was removed. So there may be other items in the home that could be salvaged, and they had a request or a question on an official salvage plan to work with local organizations on retaining and keeping the historic elements in the city, as in retaining and reusing the leaded glass window or windows in another property being rehabbed in the neighborhood in the future.
Okay, and I can kind of address that a little bit. we've been, the Cuyahoga Land Bank has been before this commission a number of times, and each time these similar conditions were put, and we've some level of salvage, and we're very open to it. My brother is actually a stained glass window. He's the owner of Whitney Stained Glass, which was mentioned earlier in this presentation, but I would be happy to engage him or we would be happy to engage him to come look and see the feasibility of saving the window, and upon direction of this commission or whomever, Landmarks staff would be happy to take it to whoever would want to house it. I didn't get a good look at the picture at the window myself to see what kind of condition it was. It's been behind walls for some time now, but it's certainly no problem with us to coordinate and facilitate that salvage plan. Beyond that window, I don't know if anyone saw anything that would be, it's primarily a gutted house. I don't know if there's anything in this particular house that would have any architectural value or any salvage value for anyone. But if Landmarks Commission staff would want to visit the property again, I'd be happy to walk them through it. But again, apart from the window, I don't know of anything of value.
Thank you for that feedback. We will move on to feedback from the local CDC for MECOS.
Morning, everyone. This is Khalid Hawthorne from MECOS. This is another house, East 99th. I think, just over there a month ago and saw the demolition of 9821 North Avenue, which is a few houses down from this. And so what ends up happening is this whole district ends up being pockmarked and full of gaps. These are beautiful homes in need of TLC. The numbers that were presented pretty much accurate, right? That's not a question. It's more of a what's our priorities, and we talked about stabilization program that's been mentioned by Landmarks Commission before, and I think this one would be a prime candidate for something like that, especially since it's already gutted for the most part. As far as securing it, gutting it, and mothballing until someone is with the resources to further rehab the building and introduce it to a new owner. We've also been trying to increase our internal capacity here at MECOS and increasing the requesting money towards these houses, specifically in the East Boulevard district as well as Grantwood allotments. We have a person coming on board to do some more research on Grantwood allotments, so hopefully making that one of the first African American historic districts in the city, for nationally recognized. And then we're also pursuing money for further rehabs within this district. We have this hammer, which is demolition, and we just need more tools. That's, I can't speak to the actual demolition itself. It is what it is, but I just hope that we can come up with more ways of dealing with these than just one option.
Thank you for that feedback. We'll move on to staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the commission meeting on October 27, 2022, I spoke to the fear of future demolitions on this street when we discussed the demolition at 9281 North Boulevard. And there's going to be some similar comments to that case here. So the history, the building was actually constructed in 1906 for Dr. R.H. and Mary Sewer. And what we're calling the addition was actually part of the original. There was no architect attached to this, but it was sold to Mrs. Sewer's brother, who was an engineer at the Brown Hoist Company. He worked there for 55 years. He was a vice president for a number of years before they left. And then it was sold in 1925 to Katie Manham and her daughter, Anna Fertel. Unfortunately, the records kind of vanish, and the way things go, you can't really find things always easily. But there was that giant gap until 1972. And we can see it was transferred a couple of times. And then I don't know who the Handyman's Builders and Management Company is, but it went into state foreclosure last year. And then it was acquired by the Land Bank as well. There was a fire in 2009 and the house was gutted by the owner. And they had no desire to put more money into the house. And at that time, they were asked if this could be transferred over to the Land Bank. It was proposed for demolition in 2011, and it was denied. It was proposed for demolition in 2012. Famicos at that time said they could not purchase or accept the house as a donation. Then Councilman Johnson wanted the house retained and would like to see this section of East 99th saved, and that the insurance proceeds were given to the mortgage holder, which did not allow for the owner to make the repairs that were needed, and thus it sat. We did do the site visit in February. There's aluminum siding around most of the house. There are some patches missing. And there's the tree that was mentioned. The interior is gutted. This is actually interesting because noting that I'm wondering if the actual 2012 is from when this was boarded up. Even though this is not a perfect mothballing, this is actually a pretty decent job, and it has been fairly weather tight for a decade. So it has not deteriorated as much as it would have if it, like our previous case that we looked at. So this is a case for better mothballing of our abandoned structures.
Yeah, I typically don't fool with my cell phone too much,
And this is the rear. They did something weird back here. And then in the basement, it looks or looked dry when we were down there.
And I saw your.
But we were able to access it. The commission is being asked to consider if the demolition of this structure is appropriate or not. And even though this project is being taken on a case-by-case basis, we have to consider not just the impact on this property, but the immediate neighbors, overall district, and the community as a whole. We have to consider previous demolitions and those impacts on this neighborhood. And we have seen that this has been an issue since 2009. In researching this case, it was found that the west side of East 99th Street in this historic district was intact in 2007. There are more than 1,600 vacant parcels in Ward 9 alone. Demolition of our existing housing stock is not sustainable, as our historic buildings are an inexhaustible resource. A quick review of the other properties on this block. 1060 East 99th Street is in foreclosure. 1064 East 99th Street demolished 2016. 1068 East 99th Street in foreclosure. 1070-72 East 99th Street demolished 2009. 1106 East 99th Street demolished 2013. 1112 East 99th Street demolished 2023. On the east side of the street, just outside the district, 4 more vacant parcels sit, 3 since 2017 and 1, the corner lot, since 2007. The land is not being reutilized. This property was acquired on September 27th, 2022 and listed on the Land Bank website as status of demolition not available. As I've stated before, we cannot demolish our way to better neighborhoods. We have to conserve our way to them. I recognize that we can't save every building, and we shouldn't. There are those that need to come down in the name of public safety. But there are also many examples of buildings in much worse condition being brought back to viable use throughout the city, and this could be one of them. Our historic districts and individual landmarks go through a long process and are elevated as being important cultural assets to the city of Cleveland, and yet to me it feels sometimes that they aren't held in that regard. Historic preservation is an incremental planning tool to help stabilize and improve neighborhoods, but it takes time and perseverance. Places like Ohio City, Tremont, and Gordon Square didn't become what they are today overnight, but they all had to start somewhere. The City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corporation need to team up and truly stabilize this neighborhood. The answer is not demolition, as evidenced previously. It has not been. Rehabilitation of this structure may seem cost prohibitive now, but when you compare that to the cost of demolition plus new construction, plus the loss of property taxes and the loss of income taxes of the residents, it is much more cost effective. This does not take the environmental toll and waste sitting in landfills, loss of embodied energy, and embodied carbon. Preservation of this building with green building retrofits could support the mayor's goals of becoming carbon neutral. Demolition of this building continues the disinvestment of the East Side neighborhoods and is counter to the mayor's goals of reinvestment as called out in his Marshall Plan. We are going to have to overinvest in this and other houses on this street to make up for past mistakes. Preservation of this building would support the Cuyahoga County Executive's goal of reducing homelessness 25% by 2028. Cannot address homelessness by demolishing potentially viable homes. You address homeless and housing access by maintaining and investing in viable, naturally occurring, affordable housing. This is another example of failed policies and practices. Using Chapter 161.05 of the Codified Ordinances of Cleveland, staff has considered the architectural and historic significance of the building, the significance of the building contributing to the architectural and historic character of its environs, the present and potential economic viability of the building considering its physical condition, and the presence of conditions on the property that are detrimental to the immediate area and cannot be reasonably remedied by other than the proposed demolition. Staff feels that demolition is not appropriate and the issuance of certificate of appropriateness should be denied. Furthermore, the land bank should take steps to better stabilize the structure by safely removing all trees and vegetation from around the foundation of the house to prevent further deterioration and to work with the member of the city's integrated development cluster to develop a more sustainable solution to the revitalization of this street and neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentes. Once again, well said. Thank you. We'll open up the floor to the commission. And we have one more rep. Oh, okay, thank you. We will open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I agree with Carl based on, I was not able to attend any site visits to this site, but just based on the photographs that I'm reviewing, it seems like it has been stabilized. And so my question is, what resources would be required to further ensure its stabilization so that its existing conditions can be maintained and not further deteriorate? Would it be FAMICO or the land bank? My other question is, does Building and Housing have the authority to, since this is a land bank owned house, to issue violations that would mandate that, you know, the tree be removed and the structure be stabilized? Does the Building and Housing have that authority to enforce those recommendations that Carl outlined?
Carl, do you have any feedback on that?
I do not. Through the chair to the Director Wong, not to put you on the spot, could you maybe answer some of those questions? You would probably know a little bit better than I.
Yeah,
Sure,
that would
Will?
be that would be a discussion that I would have with the Director of Building and Housing, but you know, the approach honestly would just be first to have a conversation with the county land bank to see what's amenable here with regard to the tree and maintenance. And then, you know, we would take further action depending on how that goes.
Right. But Carl, is the owner still known for this property? I'm sorry, did I miss that?
The land bank owns the property.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course. Sorry. Ms. Anderson, questions or comments?
Yes, the city routinely mows these properties in the summer when they sit there and nobody's taking care of them. Is that correct?
In this instance, the Cargill, we would do that maintenance. We do the, not prior.
But I guess what I'm getting at is this property's been sitting for like 13, 14 years. And I would just think that, you know, if we are hiring somebody to mow these vacant properties, would it be too much to ask them to at least report things like trees growing out of the foundation so that that can be addressed before the wall moves 6 inches? You know, it just seems like something that could be rectified before it creates a problem.
Great point, Ms. Anderson. Yeah, I think in the future, maybe they can consider that. Any questions or comments on this property? Or feedback? Were you part of the site visits?
I'm sorry, I missed out on this site visit. You know, again, it's another, you know, frustrating situation that shouldn't be happening. You know, I think I had mentioned before that there's other neighborhoods who have had programs in place to, you know, try to move these properties into the hands of people who could rehab them, you know, before they get into this kind of condition. You know, still, this still might be a viable project for somebody, but you know, things like having trees grow out of the foundation just compounds the difficulty of trying to turn these places around. That just seems like something that doesn't have to happen.
Agree. Agree. I mean, I would say the interior of this for being vacant for 10 years looks in amazingly well shaped. So whomever did the stabilizations previously, it shows the value of doing it right and how it can really maintain a house. So I personally am aligned with staff's recommendations. Mr. Edmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, so often we see something that was an integral part of the neighborhood, or like the last project that was a lovely little house that's just too far gone. And you know, we may be here at an opportunity where it's not too far gone. But my question is, what would be, if this isn't demolished and the intent is to rehabilitate it, to modernize it, what would be the steps for that to happen? Would the land bank need to find an investor who would then take it over, fix it up, and put it on the market? What would actually happen to bring this back to being a viable residence?
Who is that directed to?
I
It's a land-based position that this is not a renovatable property, so, you know, and we've gone through steps to determine that, and we don't, you know, as an organization, we don't have unlimited means, we have strings on funding sources, so this isn't something that we could do, and if we can't do it and Famicos can't do it, it's not, I don't know if there's other people that can. But maybe someone in this committee and this commission knows people that would be interested in this type of property. But you know, it's just not something that we do routinely in a lot of properties, but we have determined that this one isn't that. And I would, having been in the property, I don't know if it's as in good condition as some of these pictures indicate. I mean, there's walls missing, but the floors aren't particularly stable in a lot of areas. So, and the walls in the basement are wet and moving. So again, it's our position that this isn't a renovatable property. So I can't answer that question, I suppose.
Okay, thank you for your position. Dr. Wong.
I'd actually like to yield the floor to Carl before I speak. I see his hand raised.
Mr. Brunges.
Thank you to Mr. Etten. I think it's going to take a concerted effort, as mentioned, with the city and community development and the land bank and the county to not just look at this property. Perhaps we are looking at new construction along with the renovation to defray some of those costs that would go into this one. But it's a conversation that's been being asked for over a decade. And I think we're at that tipping point because we've lost, if this one goes and the next two that are on the demolition list, and they are on the demolition list, those go, you've lost more than half the block. But we have to have the conversation, see who can, and including Famicos as well, who does what, where it comes from. But right now, this is stable, in my opinion, and I walked through it as well, and I did not have an issue walking through it.
What is the council person's position on this house? Have they been involved in this conversation like they were in the past?
We have not heard from Councilman Conwell. I think we could probably reach out and talk with him about that as well.
I think that would be good to time into this conversation based on how, you know, the conversation needs to be expanded beyond just this property. Director Wong.
Yes, thank you to the chair and thank you, Carl. With that, I do think this warrants a conversation both for the structure and for additional structures in the area. So I would like to move to deny the project as presented.
Great, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Great, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion?
Can I weigh in briefly?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry. Given that, I mean, there is some interest from the commission on this, is there anything we could do as far as we could list the property for 6 months as a deed and escrow property and see if there is any interest that comes? It hasn't been actively marketed. It is on our website, and people look past that designation, demolition all the time. In this instance, they haven't. But if we listed it as deed and escrow property for 6 months, could we revisit it at that point and then, you know, give feedback on the viability of the renovation of the property? And maybe in the interim, if some of the commission members would like to go visit the property, they could take a closer look at some of the structural issues and make a judgment on their own.
Thank you for putting that forward. Director Wong, does that require, or does that encourage you to change your motion, or would you like to stay with your motion? to a table, like if you would
Yeah.
change it to a tabling, so to allow them that investigation.
I'm fine with tabling, to amend my motion to table, to allow for the 6 months exploration with the deed and escrow. In the meantime, I would like to propose that we do have a conversation with the County Land Bank, with Famigos and others who may be interested in, you know, seeing what else can be done besides listing it on the deed and escrow program. Thanks, Steve.
So we have amended motion. Ms. Anderson, do you agree with that amended motion to tabling versus denial?
I would agree to amend the motion as long as we can get some sort of a promise that that tree will be removed. It's not that big right now that, you know, it's gonna take a Davies Tree Service to take it down. Somebody with a chainsaw could probably get rid of it.
I think that's reasonable. We can do that.
Okay, so we have an amended motion and second. Any further discussion? Not seeing. Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Madam Chair, just point of clarification, the motion is to table for 6 months to allow CCLRC to market the property, and then there will be reevaluation in the meantime there to remove the tree. Is that correct?
Correct. That is what I heard with the motion. Director Wong, do you agree with that summary?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Kalikia?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trasick? And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
All right. So
Thank you, guys.
we look forward to seeing this continue to progress. We'd encourage you to reach out to staff and so that we can facilitate those conversations because it's important for the entire area.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm going to need to recuse myself on this next certificate of appropriateness.
Thank you for letting us know. Mr. Brunges, will you please make that modification to put Ms. Anderson in the waiting room? And in the meantime, we'll also move on to the next applicant located at Clinton. The applicant is for the Clinton Townhomes located at 4303 Clinton Avenue. New construction of homes, townhomes.
Madam Chair, I think this one was tabled at the last time you saw it, so I think there'll need to be a motion to untable.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to untable? Mr. Carter, I'm sorry, Mr. Edmond.
So moved.
Do you have a second, Mr. Dreyer?
Second.
All right, Mr. Musson?
Councilmember Gray? Mr. Kalikia?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trasick? And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
All right, excellent. Now I'd like to hand it over to the applicant. Also, I think since you were here so recently, if you can tell us the modifications, I think that's probably the best use of your time to tell us what you've modified since the last time we saw you.
Sure. This is Ryan Grass at Grassroots Architecture. I'm here with Andrew Kamniski from Gold Key Builders. Thanks again for seeing us. Ms. Trott, excellent point and respectful of your time. I'll just go through what we've kind of modified. Let me start with a thank you to this board and the design review board on lots of their comments and considerations and suggestions for investigations. We do think the project has moved forward from a neighborhood design perspective. We're excited about it, and from a design perspective. So what I can tell you holistically, message received. We started with originally, I think, 6 townhomes. We went down to 4 townhouses in the back, all including some mix of single family homes or townhouses on Clinton Avenue. What we've landed at today, I think, is hopefully a great solution, and the site plan is a perfect place to start. Let me suggest to you that the houses on Clinton Avenue are essentially unchanged from the last presentation relative to a few things I'm going to suggest. But primarily what we've done is we've removed the townhouses on Vine Street, and we've included on either side of the vehicular access drive 2 additional townhouses after removing the 4 townhouses. So we think we've got an appropriate density and also appropriate style of density. So, and again, let me offer some nuances on the site plan that we did. I have to refer to my notes. So what a primary goal here was to, one, get the vehicular access to be a little wider. It was basically a safety concern. We wanted at least fire safety personnel to have the option, if they can get down Vine Street, for them to get into the drive. There's a kind of a 20-foot limit on vehicular access drive. So we've widened the driveway, and the addition of the single family homes into the townhouses allowed us to accommodate that. What we also did was we reinvestigated the plans of the single family homes around Clinton Avenue. We reduced the width of those and then shifted those around. So the pedestrian path from Clinton Avenue to the rear single family homes is more accommodating and more inviting. Previously, it was about 7 feet wide between the 2 buildings on the left and the upper left, if you will. We've been able to increase that to 12 feet wide now. We've also shifted the garages away from that pedestrian path to the back, because our goal here really, after talking with design review and talking with Andrew and myself, is that if we're going to put something in the back, then we've got to make it feel like it's more of the Clinton Avenue neighborhood. Vine Street's not where people wander around and relax in their neighborhood. This community enjoys itself on Clinton. So we've made those kind of adjustments so that we've got a pedestrian path to the rear yards that we feel is not just accommodating, but an experience that we think will be pleasant. So that is the site plan. And we've also had a conversation with zoning. So we currently feel we are, we've gotten feedback that we are compliant with zoning. Of course, we'll move forward with the zoning only review, but we have some confidence in the position and siting and sizes of the houses that we can comply with the zoning code once the property has been allocated into 5 separate properties. So, okay, let's talk about what this thing looks like. If we can move forward on the slides. See, again, here you can see that the front townhouses are essentially unchanged, but the primary image, that's the Clinton Avenue elevation. Now you can, in this view, you can really start to see that the opening between those buildings is a little more pleasant, if you will. And the reduction of the width of the homes by, honestly, it was a foot, maybe 18 inches or something. Nothing that really impacts the scale and size of the building, but allows us to make that pedestrian path a little more pleasant. And you can start to see it in the suggestion of the single family homes that are in the back. The floor to floor ceilings are smaller, of a lower height than the ones on the front. The finished floor to grade is smaller on the rear townhouses than the front townhouses, or from the rear single family homes as compared to the front single family homes. Our goal here was to take a clue from the smattering of single family homes that are currently on Vine Street, so that they take kind of a secondary position relative to Clinton Avenue. I believe the next slide shows the rear single family homes a little better. So we've taken some of the design cues that we took on the front buildings and from around the neighborhood and included those in these kind of, let's call them modest single family homes. Their access is, again, vehicular on the back, and there's a drive between them that gets you to the garages to the front. And I think there's a couple more images. Yeah, this one's unchanged, other than now the site section in the bottom of the sheet shows now what the, let's call it the reduction in the scale of the rear buildings are. The line that's shown there was previously at the peak of the last design. So we left that line there to kind of illustrate the height of the rear buildings now. And again, they'll be visible modestly from the front, and I think from that pedestrian path, they'll look like, you know, somewhere you want to go. And I think the last image shows the front of Clinton Avenue, and again, that little pedestrian entrance, and the 3 front homes with their porches and smattering of colors. That's where we're at. That's what we changed, and I welcome some comments. Oh, I apologize. There's another slide. There's all our materials. We've committed to, previously if I could speak, not for you, but in memory of our discussions, I think we were, if I could be presumptuous to suggest that we're all feeling pretty good about the front homes. Painted fiber cement siding, aluminum clad wood windows, asphalt shingle roofing, and we made some accommodations to the front porch, tongue and groove wood surface, and wood on the surrounding of it, so it's more in keeping with the neighborhood. So what we've done is we've committed to those same materials on the rear buildings, so it feels like it's supposed to be in the neighborhood. Now that's it.
All right, thank you for the summary presentation. That's very helpful. We'll move on to design review comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Ohio City Design Review Committee last week after it was sent back from the commission at our March 9th meeting. Some committee members still had issues with the proposed density, and there was a discussion about the location and orientation of the rear homes. Committee members commented that the materials for the rear homes, commented on them, and recommended some adjustments on the Clinton Avenue homes, which the new plans reflect. But it was basically, as Ryan said, the using fiber cement and aluminum clad on the rear homes in addition to the front homes.
Excellent, thank you. And staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the staff finds the comments from design review, they're in agreement with the comments from design review and are generally in support of the changes made. As mentioned, the applicants have been working with zoning to ensure that they are compliant with that. Previous meeting with zoning talked about now there was just the question of a rear yard setback, since they're not townhouses, they're single family homes. And they also discussed Clinton addresses versus Vine addresses. And so they are working to be in compliant with any zoning regulations.
Excellent, thank you. We'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. I'll start us off and then I'll hand it over to Ms. Strickland. I just want to say thank you for listening to our feedback. I was very pleasantly surprised to see the your revisions. I think it is definitely a improvement over your initial design, and really does lend itself to the mother-in-law or carriage house configuration that is seen throughout the west side of Cleveland. So overall, I think appreciate your listening to our feedback, and I'm in support of this project. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the houses on Clinton, and I'm glad that we're staying on this slide. The gable window in the red house in this slide looks bigger than what was represented in the other slides. And I believe that there were comments from our last meeting about the size of that window. So I want to confirm that the window has been adjusted in size. And also I have a question about the dormer in the greenhouse, because Commissioner Benazzi had talked about that not being quite in scale. And I wondered if there was consideration to increase the size of that dormer.
Mr. Strickland, thank you very much. If we could go back a couple slides to maybe the elevation. Oh, no, that's perfect. So this is actually the final design. I apologize. I hope this doesn't sound sneaky, but the 3 images that are on those material elevations, with the amount of time I had, I didn't update those to those 2 little changes. I kept that slide the same because it was kind of material specific. So I apologize if that seems a little underhanded. That wasn't the intention. So you can see in this slide, the final design is the dormer It has been increased, so there's actually some reasonably sized windows up there. And the small window on the red house has been reduced in scale as well. We understood the comments there, but didn't reflect those in those material slides.
Yeah, I misunderstood. I did not make the comments from the last meeting, but I wanted to make sure that they were addressed.
Sure.
I think the window in the red house, personally, I think is too small, and I appreciated the size adjustment that was in the material slide, but maybe some of my other commission members that are more architecturally inclined can discuss the size of that window. Thank you. I don't have a problem either way. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Strickland. I will hand it over to Mr. Edmund, and then I can comment after that. Go ahead, Mr. Edmund.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to echo your comments. I think architecturally, the smaller gable window and the little bit larger dormer look just right now. As I appreciate the responsiveness to the comments and going through some rather significant changes to what you're doing. As I recall, the neighborhood design review had a concern about the density. I do not share that concern. I think the density here is appropriate and helps enliven the neighborhood, and it's I don't think it's too dense for its context. So I would just express my support and say I think thanks for playing along with us and helping us to help you, I think, improve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmund. Mr. Lull, I am sorry if I overlooked you. I wasn't clear that you were present from Ohio City.
Good morning, Madam Chair. No worries at all. So Nate Lull from Ohio City, Inc. Just wanted to quickly share the community process that we reviewed at the last meeting. So this project has been on Courbonize, which is our community engagement platform, since October of 2022. The developer came to an Ohio City hosted community meeting in October of 2022 as well. The developer has worked, I believe, with the community and been responsive to the comments that have been made. Some of the most recent comments on the Courbonize site regarding the newest design appreciated the density. There were a few comments that thought it was still too dense. However, there has been a lot of praise for the single-family homes, and there are several comments left that suggested that it is fitting with the character of the historic district. So overall, I know we are appreciative just of the responsiveness of the development team and the architect, and the most recent comments left have been generally positive. So thank you.
Thank you for updating us on that also. Not seeing any additional questions or comments. Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Edmund?
I move that the plan be approved as presented.
Thank you. Mr. Strickland?
Second that.
Excellent, thank you. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Brunges, I'm sorry, Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Councilmember Gray? Mr. Colicchio?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on. Thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trasick?
Yes.
And Ms. Tri?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing your project progress.
Hey, thanks for
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll now move on to our concept plan review. We'll be looking at two different applications, one for the demolition and one for the proposed expansion. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Pat Highland. I am a architect, senior architect with Perspectus. So I'll be presenting this today along with Derek Egnatowski of St. Ignatius, who is the director of campus operations. Derek, do you want to do a preamble?
Sure. Just going over a few things. As you know, we did have our block clubs meetings. Richard Klingshern, who is our former vice president of operations and CFO, is our operating as our project manager for this. Him and John Gill presented all these plans to our Bridge, Carroll, J block clubs, as well as our South of Lorraine block club and the Ohio City community meeting, and all of them were met with very positive feedback. There were no objections or any kind of pushback. Actually, a lot of excitement about it. So, thought that's worth noting. And then I know a number of you were already on the walkthrough, which I'm sure you'll get to, and show the photos and whatnot. And as we had discussed, we're really excited about this. It's an investment in our students, in the school, in the education of everything. So I guess that's pretty much our basis on this presentation right now.
All right, so I will start with the let's say the design side of the conversation. So just to reinforce what Derek said, so this project is, let's say, the physical fulfillment of the Vision 30 strategic plan that SEG Nations has been working on the past few years. Just to orient everybody, the yellow box shows where the project is going. So this is on the west side of Wasmer Field at SEG Nations. Next. So just to zoom in a little bit more, again, we are, let's say we're northwest of Lorraine, across on the west side of Wasmer Field. Just again, to get a little bit more orientation to the project site. Next. Just to familiarize everybody with the surrounding buildings, I'll just start at the top left-hand corner. So that is the main building, what is called the main building. That was the 1890s building constructed by SEG Nations for the school. If we go counterclockwise, the library is a two stories with a basement library building that's primarily from the 1980s. Sullivan Gym is the varsity competition gym that was built in the 1950s. Murphy Gym is an auxiliary and practice gym that was built in the 1990s. The power plant, the boiler plant, was built post-war, like 1946. And Carroll Gym was the original gymnasium that is from the 1920s. Next. So to build what we need to build requires the demolition of two buildings, which is the power plant and Carroll Gym. Next. The addition approximately will take up this space, so you can see our need to demolish those two buildings. Next. And then we're heavily renovating the library piece. So in totality, between the addition, which is north of 55,000 square feet gross, and the library, which is nearing 30,000 square feet of renovation, we're touching around 80,000 square feet of SEG Nations physical plant for this project. Next. Just to give you a little bit closer view of the buildings we're touching or removing. So this is Carroll Gym outlined. Next. So this is the view from east to west across the field. The building has been added on to over the years. See a little press box that was built up there, as well as some storage with the garage doors. Next. This is the north facade from the Marion parking lot. Next. And then these are the interior facades from we call it the quad space. You get some fairly utilitarian masonry load-bearing building for an old gym. Next. The next building we are demolishing is the power plant building. So this is again built in the 40s. What's necessary here is that we have to build a new central plant in the basement of the library, get that up and running, reconnect campus before we can go ahead and demolish the existing power plant building. Next. Just to give a sense, so it's a 2-story building, utilitarian building, which hosts a lot of the physical plant and some storage space. And then there is the smokestack. Next. Again, just another view of it from the east looking west across the field. Next. And this is the last facade, the south facade of the power plant. Next. The main building, we are really not touching much besides some connection points. Again, the building was built, I think it was finished in 1894, 5 or 6 stories, kind of a German Gothic education, collegiate, eclectic building. Next. These are views from the interior of the courtyard. I'm looking from east to west. You can see the articulation of the masonry in the windows and the fenestration, the banding. The top left-hand corner is where our bridge will be connecting from the addition into the main building. We can go over that a little bit later in the presentation. I just want to give you a sense of the dormers and the finials and the articulation of the main building. Next. Also the 1980s building, the library building, to get a sense of that facade. Nothing super spectacular, but it reflected its times. Next. And then the east facade of the library, this is where the whole addition will be engaging this entire facade. So this facade will be heavily manipulated to connect to the new building. Next. Again, just to orient everybody, the addition is going on the west side of Wasmer Field. We are connecting, as I mentioned, that for across that full library east facade. On the north side, we'll be having a glass umbilical bridge go from the addition over to the main building. Next. I know these are not the easiest to read all the labels, but just the red box denotes what the addition is. So if I were just to start from the left-hand side of the plan, lower left, so that's the library that we're renovating. Basically, the library is being renovated into student services, so counseling, tutoring, those types of functions. And the main level plan of the addition, there is no basement for the addition. It's slab on grade. This level will have in teal from the top in the north is athletic suites, admin, and trainer. And trainer's room. We have a new varsity locker room, some varsity storage. The orange room, as we go south in the plan, is a large instruction room, and the gray is basically soft space. So a large cafe space, and the 6 sets of doors you see on the right, that leads out to the field. Next. Again, library second floor is primarily student services. On the second floor, a lot of counseling needs and small group collaboration spaces. In the addition, second floor is primarily flexible classrooms, generate more for history, social studies, history, languages, English, more the liberal arts type of subjects, and you get a sense. On this plan, you can see we are integrating fixed bleachers into the building as part of an element. And then you can see at this level, we are connecting at the second and third floor of the main building over to or from the addition to the main building. Next. Third floor is primarily arts. So drawing, painting, ceramics, making, digital arts, visual arts, media arts are all in orange. The yellow and mustard spaces are general use, flexible classrooms. Then the little bump out on the east side is a press box for the field. Again, not for coaching, but for the St. Ignatius Broadcasting Network, their own student-run broadcasting and PA announcers and things like that. Next. And then we do have a third floor mezzanine. This will be for especially for advanced art students to have their own loft space within the arts part of the building. Next. Give you a sense. I think the renderings read better than the elevations, obviously, but you get a sense of where we're going. You will notice our elevations and our renderings the towers are not aligning or do not jive with one another. Just know that the tower is something we are it's a design issue we're tackling. So I acknowledge that the tower is not cooked yet. Next. And then sections, again, the addition is 3 stories plus a mezzanine, standard, nothing that interesting going on sectionally, but yeah, a lot of education space. Next. So we can go through the renderings. So again, this is the view looking from east to west across the field. The white element that is, and the doors, the glazing below, that is the entry to that common space, cafe space for the students. The white element across the base of the building, that is where we are doing athletic storages, but underneath a bleacher system for events. There is a gabled element in the middle of the mass that is where the press box is. And then the tower element, again, it differs from the elevations, but we are trying to, the school wishes to not match, but emulate the tower, the main Ignatius Tower that you can see looming kind of in the background of the rendering. The school wants some kind of a landmarking device at that northeast side of the building. Next. Again, same elements. You get a sense of the arts are all in that tower element, in the mezzanine. Again, that'll develop. We do dormer elements will be are influenced from the existing dormers on the existing building. And you can see again the bleachers. Next. Yeah, just another view, more from the south to north. You can see the glass entry to the common space and how that accesses out to the fields and the track. The material palette is derived from the existing main building in terms of red brick. We're looking at the base of the building, an Ariscraft cast product to mimic the rusticated base of the main building, and then some buff brick as well that matches the buff materiality of the main building, and then cast stone elements above and around the windows. The punched windows, trying to match the proportions of the main building, but not copy them directly in all its very intense ornamentation and articulation. Next. This is the interior courtyard, so I'm looking, if I'm standing almost with my back to the main building, looking to the east. The addition is kind of, you can see the difference in the window articulations on the addition versus the main building, and you can see the glass bridge connector that we're proposing between the main building and the addition. So this will be a right now it's kind of a leftover space on the Ignatius campus, so this will be this exterior space will become a active part of St. Ignatius student life when this building is completed. Next. And just one more view from the north. Again, the second and third stories, or say the third story and the mezzanine, those are primarily art spaces. So I hope everyone can appreciate, while we're tightening up these windows, north light is nice for art spaces. So we're taking advantage of that. Next. Yeah, materials, we've been matching materials with the existing. You can see the red brick and the sample of buff brick that we're looking at. Next. Again, the Ariscraft stone or cast product. We're looking for the rustication elements closer to the ground. Next. We'll take our cues from miscellaneous metals and window finish and gutters and downspouts to be more of a brownish character as referenced with the main building. Next. Elements of the tower, while we cannot afford copper, we are looking at different metals to patinaed or metals that mimic some of the beautiful articulation of the tower for the steeple and some other elements on the tower. Next. From a roofing standpoint, I'm calling the mansard roofs. It'll be, again, slate. We can't afford slate on this, so we'll use some sort of high quality dimensional asphalt shingle for all areas of the sloped roofs. So I'll call this our field asphalt. Next. And then on the tower element, if you look at the existing tower, there's a beautiful polychromatic detailing of what they did with the slate tiles. So the school and us as designers want to do some sort of pattern on the tower element. Again, using the asphalt shingles that we have at our disposal in different colors. Next. So that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. We'll begin with design review feedback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee was generally in favor of the proposal, but felt that the proposed tower element and lighter colored area that houses the AMDG sign could use more refinement. There were comments on the appropriateness of some of the roofing materials and an encouragement to use real slate or a metal product just for the decorative roof portion of the tower element. But overall, the Ohio City Design Review Committee is supportive of the proposal and of the demolitions.
All right, thank you. And staff report.
Madam Chair, we'd like to have Mr. Lull from Ohio City Inc. give his feedback first.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Lull.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nate Lull from Ohio City Inc. This project has been to our community meeting hosted in February, and I know that the St. Ignatius team has been working with the block clubs as well to keep them informed. No opposition or concerns have been made aware to us at this time, so we'll keep the community updated as this goes through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lull. Now staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did do the walkthrough as mentioned and don't have the photos here. We'll present those when these come back for final, but the staff feels that the tower element could use some revision as has been noted. We think that we should get great detail on how that glass connector is going to attach to the main building as well, because that's a pretty important element to this project. But we were generally in support of the demolitions and the new construction. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Evans.
So, point of order, Madam Chair, is this one, are we considering the demolition and the conceptual design here separately or as one item? And the design portion, that's just the conceptual design, right? So they would come back for final, is that correct?
Well, I'll let Mr. Musson or Mr. Brunges respond. Since these are both listed under conceptual design, I'm assuming we're giving feedback on both, but go ahead, Mr. Brunges.
That is correct. We put this under conceptual, so there's no action being taken today. When it comes back and we can give more information with the photographs, that would be the more appropriate time since they do have to come back for final anyway. Thank you.
So you can give feedback on demolition and or the design. Mr. Emmond, do you have any feedback or would like to continue to think a little bit?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll continue. I think definitely the understanding the articulation of both the tower element and the connector to the original building are important. I think I like that the connector is glassy and elevated, and it makes that connection a little more sensitive. But I'd like to, learn a little bit more about that. Also, the southeast block that's the contrasting stone color does seem to be that piece of, particularly when you're looking at the longer perspective from across the field, that piece really jumps out and stands out as a not well integrated into the rest. And I understand that it's a contrast, but there may be some whether it's window scale or something, or maybe a cast stone product that's not quite as bright, to maybe integrate the facade a little bit more. So otherwise, I think this is a pretty nice complementary construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmund. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at the courtyard elevations, it looks like the headers or the lintels at the windows are very prominent. I'm assuming that's a limestone or.
You talking the existing?
I'm looking at this elevation right here.
You talking about the existing lintels or the proposed lintels?
Well, I think I'm looking at the addition, the
Okay.
west facade of the addition. And so it looks like the window heads are quite prominent, either in a limestone or.
It'll be a cast. It'll be a cast stone.
And
product.
similar for the sill.
Correct.
All right, and so can we go to which I think is appropriate to complement the existing structure. Can we go, okay, let's go back one slide. In both of these different slides, it looks like you've got a similar head and sill detail on the inset portions of this east facade. But then on that gabled protruding section, you don't have the same head and sill details. I'm just.
Yeah, it's our intention that those are going to be more aligned in terms of pronounced presence. So we will have limestone headers and sills at the press box element around those windows.
All right. So, and on the north facade, can we go to that, Carl? Right there.
Same thing here. Yeah, you will. I said we're tightening up these proportions currently. So yes, the idea is to more unify the sills and the headers and even the jams.
Okay.
So we go around the building.
That was my question. So yeah, I think some refinement of those details is certainly warranted. And it sounds like you're working on it, so that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland. I'll give my feedback now, just so I don't see any other hands. I know this is not in our purview, but a suggestion from somebody who spent a lot of time on that football field for multiple sports. Within your new addition, are you planning on doing any handicapped accessible restrooms that are easily accessed from the field?
Yeah, so if you go back to the first floor plan. So the idea overall is that this kind of the larger gray space south of the orange kind of large group instruction room, that'll be like a gathering space and serve as on game days for visitors and home folks to come in and out. So we'll have a full complement of all accessible toileting and things like that. So
Excellent.
We're not doing porta potties. It'll be part of they'll have access to the building.
Sure. No, excellent. That's great to hear. Thank you for that explanation. And can you go to the exterior, the east elevation again, Carl? That works. What about the next one? You can stay there, actually. I think, it has been said, and I would agree that, the tower feels a little awkward right now. I understand your intentions, but I'd encourage you to look at the hipped gable that is on the Carroll corner of the main building. Something that can provide that, identity to the area and or allow you a canvas to do something maybe creative with the roofing, but not be as right now. I think this is almost competing with your the main tower, and that is such an identity element for this campus that I think something more discreet would be more appropriate here. I would also agree with what has been said about the heads and the sills and lintels, making that consistent of a design element across the building. And then finally about the white mass on, the south side of this addition that has the AMDG logo. I think it feels a little foreign. It feels like the addition that was not integrated with the existing building, where everything else you've done is fairly sensitive and trying to integrate for discreetly with the main building and demonstrate as new, but not trying to take away from the existing older building. And then the bleachers, and I think that's a creative solution, and I think yep, that was all of my comments. Other questions or comments from the commission? Not seeing any. Do you feel like you've received enough feedback from the commission to continue the development of your design?
Yeah, it's always funny when we present so this is, you're looking 3 weeks ago into our where we were in the design process. So things have definitely been tightened up and they look much better now. But we knew we had between the white mat, the AMDG block and the tower, we understand we had work to do. So.
Well, we look forward to seeing you return with the final solutions.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that concludes our conceptual plan reviews for today. We'll then move on to meeting minutes. Are there any questions or comments on the meeting minutes that were circulated? The 4 that were circulated were the August 25th, 2022, September 8th, 2022, October 13th, 2022, and February 23rd, 2023. Not hearing any questions or comments or clarifications. Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Ebden.
I move that all 4 be approved.
All right. We have a motion. Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
We'll give it to Mr. Dryer for this one. Mr. Dryer has a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosick,
Yes.
and Ms. Trott. Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we'll move on to administrative reports.
Madam Chair, to the Commission, we're working on scheduling site visits for several projects on Lorraine Avenue next week. We'll be emailing out the details of those to the Commission members shortly, hopefully today or tomorrow. Otherwise, nothing to report.
All right, excellent. Well, then I think that concludes our agenda for today, and we will adjourn, and we'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Thank you for being present.
Have a good day.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.